This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Tyler Mount. He served as a branding and business consultant, digital marketer, social strategist to nearly 1,000 clients spanning 14 countries worldwide. He's the owner of Henry Street Creative. I mean, he has partnered with some of the biggest brands and some of that you know of without a doubt, including the founder of Zillow and the CEO of T-Mobile, and helping them with their personal brand. And he's featured in New York Times, Forbes magazine, Medium, and a number of keynote speaking events as well. You're going to hear that come out through these two segments as he just continues to bring so much great content to us today around the personal brand and the mistakes that I'm sure you are probably making that you're going to want to hear in today's segment, and even following in the next segment, things that if you're trying to attract investors, you're going to want to hear these two shows. Well, if you're in business, you need some of the skills that our guest today has. I'm looking forward to jumping into this conversation. I know I have tried to do a lot of this over the years and, man, never have been successful at it. So I'm looking forward to learning today. I know you as a listener are as well. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, honored to have you on and to dive in to this topic. But before we do, give the listeners a little bit about your background. Man, what do you do exactly, right? So they can gather a bigger picture of who you are and how you help people in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I pride myself on being a personal brand expert, specifically in the real estate niche. I'm an expert when it comes to not only building your personal brand, but building the marketing ecosystem that allows you to increase your GCI, increase your production year over year. And in order to do that, I'm the CEO of Henry Street Creative, which is a consultancy firm that works with many Fortune 100 CEOs, broker owners, and national brokerages. And we also have a media arm of the company that supplies all of our clients with the top tier media assets they need, whether that's website, logo, positioning, social content, and many things in between.
Yeah, love that. Speak to just the different industries maybe that you've been a part of and your all's unique approach, to marketing.
Well, certainly. I've been very fortunate to work at the upper echelons of many industries, and I oftentimes wonder how they came to be, right? I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I've worked in hospitality, lifestyle brands. I was head of digital marketing for a portion of NBC Universal. I've worked in the new development space, the investment space, commercial, resi. I have a long-standing career on Broadway and in the arts and entertainment world. And I currently represent multiple international financial institutions. So, specifically through my work, working with some of my heroes and some of the leaders of industry, I've learned that no matter what the industry is, the core philosophy of the importance of personal brand and putting your best foot forward with process and marketing efforts is typically the same no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah. That and those processes are difficult to learn, I think, unless you have somebody like yourself on the team, right? It's amazing the time that people spend, and it can go nowhere, right, without just a little bit of expertise. And so, I wanted you to be able to, speak to the listener right now that's, even trying to do some marketing potentially, and maybe give us some basic things, and then we'll dive into even, how that personal brand for the leader is so important and how you all help people do that. But pretty much everybody listening, if they're an operator, right, they're trying to connect to investors, right? High net worth individuals. They're trying to build that trust, right? We're trying to add value to our investors. So, right, they trust us and want to partner and want to invest in our opportunities. Can you just give us some thoughts behind, these are some obvious things that you should be doing or not doing, or things to be thinking about as they're trying to create content every day?
Yeah, absolutely. So, working with a lot of investors, I'll tell you that the first mistake the majority of my clients make is being too professionally minded. And let me explain what I mean. Whenever we're talking about any type of content development or content strategy, what's really important to remember here is, especially in our industry, it's all about relationship building. You know that, I know that, the listeners certainly know that as well. However, there's typically a disconnect in the marketing system that people are employing. I will say that if your content, whether that's on LinkedIn or Instagram or your website, is exclusively focused on real estate development or investment or something in between, it's really lacking any type of what I call humanization, right? I have to first like you and understand you and want to spend time with you prior to agreeing to transact with you. And that's what's really important to remember. I have seen companies and organizations move the needle far greater by focusing on a leader or a CEO or a C-suite member's personal brand versus talking about the messaging or positioning of the company. So the first thing we always do is really approach our marketing from an authentic standpoint, right? Whitney, you obviously are a podcast host. You're many other things in addition to that. My job would be to say, okay, how do we show all of those facets? Maybe my client is a father, a mother, a design enthusiast, a sports enthusiast, an athlete, an avid reader, right? A shopaholic. All of these things really start to develop humanistic characteristics that allow consumers and potential clients to want to work with you. So that's the first thing we always have to do. Humanize the client from a place of authenticity in an attempt to build relationships versus exclusively showing what it is I do.
Love that. I thought you gave some great tips there as well. Just things to think about that help see the human side of you, right? Not just that we're over here digging dirt and why we're digging dirt or what we're about to build, right? I love absolutely. That. And you said it too. I need to like you first, right? And then trust you. And they see those things that they connect with, no doubt about it. So let's talk about that personal brand then, and focusing on the leader's brand versus the company brand. Speaking, and you did a little bit, but maybe going a little further, why we would do one or the other, or some of both, or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me. So the answer is quite clear to me. I have represented or represent the CEO of Zillow, the CEO of Twitter, the CEO of T-Mobile, the President of the United States, right? And all of these people who are leaders in industry in their own right. First, we focus on their personal brand. And let me explain why. Yes, for example, let's take T-Mobile for an example, okay? T-Mobile is a faceless, humanless entity. It's a corporation that sells a product or a service, okay? That's in one column. The second column are the human beings, the real life living creatures that inform the decisions that the organization makes, right? So I firmly believe that the leaders in any organization, whether you're a startup founder, a single investor, or the leader of the free world, whoever you are, those ethics and values trickle down and inevitably inform the decisions that the corporation makes. So a lot of people are like, well, let's focus on personal brand over here, and then we'll have a completely different conversation about the corporate entity, when in reality, they're very much intersecting, right? So what I typically do is remind people that the people who power the organization, their ethics trickle down. So that's step one, okay? Keep in mind, whenever we talk about engagement, when we talk about any level of marketing in the professional or the corporate world, we know statistically that the human account, the CEO, the leader of the organization is almost always going to have more engagement than the entity. Why? Because people are on social to connect. People want to build a relationship with someone, not something. And so what we typically do is focus on the personal brand first and the corporation second. Why? Because if we understand the personal brand of the leaders, that will inevitably inform our decisions from the corporate side.
Makes a ton of sense. And so somebody that has no presence online, give a couple tips for them, and then maybe I'll give you another example. But somebody that's just starting to market to investors, they have no personal brand yet, nobody knows who they are. What are a couple of quick action steps that they could take?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking to market to investors and you have no online presence, the first thing we have to rectify and understand is that we are starting at a huge disadvantage. Now, the good news is we can fix that disadvantage quite quickly. But I always talk about user or consumer perception is truth. Okay, I want you to really think about that. I didn't say factually accurate. I said truth. So if a potential investor who I am farming, who I am trying to convert, okay, has no sense of who I am because I don't have a website, because I don't have a social presence, it's going to be really, really hard to build a relationship with them versus someone being able to research me, understand who I am, and then meet me where I already am. The key here is perception. I don't care how much experience you have, how many doors you have, your total, lifetime production history. All I care about is that the perception I get from you online is positive. If you want to be in a luxury market, then your marketing has to feel as if it could be consumed by a luxury consumer. So to answer your question, matter of fact, the first thing we have to do is start getting an online presence. Building that personalized website is an absolute necessity because, again, it's the first level of attack whenever we're talking about humanizing you and giving a potential consumer more insight into your personal narrative. From there, on top of that, we have to remember that Instagram, Facebook, YouTube are massive search engines. The majority of my clients, before I meet them, even you, Whitney, right? I didn't get on your website, I got on Instagrams, right? Prior to today's conversation. Why? Because it's the best way to understand unfiltered who is this person. Right. And that's what's really key. I always tell my clients to Google themselves in an incognito browser. Okay. This is what a blind consumer is doing before they meet you. If the first three links are an outdated LinkedIn that hasn't been updated, let's say a website that's templatized from your brokerage, when I'm working with a lot of residential real estate agents. And then finally, an outdated Facebook, okay, from 10 years ago when you were in college, what does that say to a consumer? Whether you like it or not, no matter what experience you have, it says this person isn't worth their salt. Why would I ever work with them? On the other hand, if I have no experience in the market, but I have a killer updated, sexy and elevated website with an updated LinkedIn, with tons of content that I post regularly, with an Instagram feed that's curated and speaks to what I do, or rather what I want to do, I am almost inevitably, unless it comes from a referral source, booking the client over the legacy provider because I will get the meeting unlike the other. And so that's what's really important to remember. It is hopefully a huge weight off your shoulders, that it's not necessarily experience, it's perception. And that is how myself and my team change the lives of a lot of these, business leaders and individuals looking to make a change.
Yeah, love that. I could not agree with you more as far as the perception. And I'm living truth of that. I know you don't know me, and my Instagram page is not the place to learn about me. That's so funny. I can tell you that. We've never done marketing well ever. However, we produced a ton of content, right? 1,800 plus shows, right? Daily. And I'm living proof, and I'll be as honest to anybody that perception is reality because we could quickly raise a lot of money, right? And it wasn't because of my experience early on. We have a lot more experience now, years later, right? But early on, there was just a ton of credibility that came along with that, right? People see me that, with all these people, right? I've interviewed, let's say I'd interviewed 200 or 300 people at that time, and all of a sudden I can raise millions of dollars, right? And so, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's years later that I actually had some more experience, but there was definitely a perception there that helped me a long ways, right? People already knew me when they got on the phone with me, or they felt like they did. Right. Mm-hmm. And investors did. So personalized website. So personalized website versus the business website, right, is what you're saying. That what would be on that website? I mean, ways for them to get to know you, I assume, and build trust. But what does that look like exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my answer is quite simple. The majority of my clients start with some level of a website, a lot of the times that a company or a brokerage provides them. And the issue with that is quite simple, right? It's templatized, it has to be, and it's typically at the brokerage level. And, when we're talking about not necessarily investment, but residential real estate, commercial real estate, or even in the investment side, the brokerage is concerned with one thing, one of their agents, one of their representatives doing the deal. They don't care if it's you or your colleague because they're going to get the same split. And so consequently, and rightfully so, all of the marketing typically is at the brokerage or the organizational level. That is a massive disservice to the individual consumer or the individual seller, right? Ultimately, what we have to do is create our own custom website that can tell your narrative in a bespoke and elevated way, completely customizable. Again, a legacy provider who's done this for 50 plus years is going to have a very different look, vibe, and feel and narrative than, let's say, me who got into the industry 3 days ago, right? Both equally reputable in terms of perception or our ability to have a positive perception, but in terms of the look and feel of the brand and what we want consumers to take away will be wildly different. We can only achieve that in creating the epicenter of your digital ecosystem, which happens to be website. So on the website, we're traditionally first talking about the index landing page, right? We want typically some type of hero video on the top. We don't need a video with sound. We just want an idea of understanding who you are in the market. So for example, on my website, you will see me working with clients, some, popular household names. Regardless of my experience, you have no idea what I do, but at least I'm in the room with these people and you go, oh, for whatever reason, Tyler's accredited. Okay, we've already done our job. Number 2 is getting to know the person, the individual. So right after that, we'll typically throw in a brief bio with a chance to see an extended bio on an external page. And then from there, we'll keep it short and sweet. We'll walk through some level of service offering or content offering. For me, obviously, it's, business consultancy, investor consultancy, marketing consultancy, and then walking through those offerings. From there, we'll build out additional pages. Again, I want to keep it quite simple and streamlined. We're not building like a financial institution's website here. 5 to 7 pages is beyond enough to tell a consumer your narrative. We'll have an additional about me page, which really speaks to a full-length bio, maybe your production history, your accreditations, any awards, honors you might have. Then, we'll get into press because, again, earned media is a really important portion of our business, whether you like it or not. Why? Because it directly relates to perception. If I'm in the New York Times, regardless of why I'm there, if I'm able to say I've been featured in the New York Times and then put that back on my website, it again further accreditates me and adds to my positive perception. And then the final portion, obviously, is a content offering services page in terms of what you as a business owner really specialize in. And then we typically end with a contact form or the ability to sign up directly to have a pro bono meeting with me. And so ultimately that or a version of that is typically what we recommend. Through rigorous testing, we've learned this, ironically, converts more people to sale than ever talking specifically about investment or real estate, right? Humanizing the person and really starting to establish a relationship with the customer before they even call you.
Love that. Yeah, that's what we did through the podcast. I never had a personal website, but people listen to my voice every day, right? And then they get me on the phone and they just feel like they already know me. I heard it time and time and time again, even more so than I ever expected. But I should have a personal website. I love
Certainly.
this. I love this. And so, how many platforms should we be using, right? It is hard to manage. Obviously, you saw my Instagram page. I've never done a lot, on social, right? Personally, honestly, it's been mostly the podcasts and newsletters and things like that. What should we be focusing on?
See, that's such a tough and convoluted question. It really depends on multiple factors. I get asked this all the time, and it really is a case-by-case scenario, but I can walk you through how we make that decision. Obviously, I always say, variety is the spice of life. The larger the net, the more fish we catch. However, if we have a large net, but there's tons of holes in it because we're not really focused on anything, then it's not an effective net. So what I typically say is, as we get people comfortable with this concept of posting regularly, of being active on social platforms, of potentially having an updated website, maybe we blog, maybe we vlog, maybe we have a podcast, right? If I were to tell you, Whitney, today I need you to get on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, have a blog, have a vlog, have a podcast, you would do none of them well and lose your mind, okay? And actually, that's counterintuitive to what we're trying to do. The first thing I always say is, okay, who are you and who is your market? We obviously know there are different demographics on all of these platforms, and I find a lot of my clients really start to get overwhelmed with the variety and the options. One of my dear friends told me this a decade ago, and I've said it almost every day, and it's this: limitations are that which free us. This idea that if we actually limit ourselves, not in our beliefs, but in what we're focused on, we can actually do those things much better. So I will always say we're going to walk before we run. I typically choose 2 to 3 platforms that I can walk you through, implement process, which is key. Process. So you feel like you're in control, you know exactly what you're doing, how often you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And then once we have a dedicated process, we can go from there. Like I said, these platforms are very unique per demographic. So let's say, for example, you're trying to find investment. Obviously, there are exceptions to every rule. You could probably find investors on TikTok. There certainly are investors on TikTok. But if I needed to say biggest bang for my buck, I'm starting on LinkedIn. Why? Because we know that's where the decision makers are. It has the highest, average HHI of any platform. We say it's where the decision makers are. It's where C-suite is. Okay. And so our ability to target that demographic while providing value-added content, think thought leadership content on LinkedIn, that's your safest bet. Additionally, Facebook for investment. Why? Because an older demographic is on Facebook. This is not to say that there aren't plenty of investors on Instagram. This is not to say that there aren't plenty of investors on TikTok. It really is saying, okay, I have to fish intelligently versus just throwing a net out with tons of holes in it and seeing what happens.
Love that. Fishing intelligently. And you said it earlier, it's like knowing, I wrote it down, but it's like knowing who you are, knowing who your audience is, right? Getting really clear about that. Maybe that's a good place to hone in for just a moment, helping the audience think through just that, because they need that before they're creating content, right? And so how do we think through, or how niche down, should our audience be, or this, our avatar, that we're trying to create of this person that we're going after as an investor?
So look, I always say to be as micro as possible at the beginning, and we can always expand if we're not seeing movement. I will always tell you that content has a way of creating your niche for you. And if you're consistent with that, you're going to build a niche or fandom around that specific topic. Okay. I tell the story of when I was getting certified at YouTube as a content creator and YouTube content creator. I was partnered for an exercise with an 80-year-old man. And I was really disappointed because obviously he was the oldest one in the room. I was like, why are you here? He tells me he's a doll painter. And I'm even less thrilled. Okay. And then we start looking at his account. He had over 1 million subscribers. And it was living proof that no matter what you do, there's an audience. And so that is why I'm saying being as niche as possible at the beginning is always, always, always a good idea. Some of my most successful clients have such a small niche, and there's enough people in the world within that niche to give them all the business they need, whether I'm working with clients who exclusively represent veteran clients. That's a really, really fantastic niche. I have clients out of Southeast Asia who exclusively work with investors in the United States looking to invest in Southeast Asia. Again, it's a really, really small demographic, but when you're looking for the best provider for this one niche, there's very few people to choose from. So what I would say here is quite simple. Pinpointing your customer, which is a part of the user journey that I take all of my clients through, understanding their spending habits, what they wear, who they shop with, what brands they like, what brands they don't like. If they're working with a competitor, who are those competitors and why them? What do they value? If we have a better understanding of that, we have a better understanding of what your marketing should be, where we should target, and where we should buy media. So those things are obviously really, really important and the very foundation of where we start our marketing journey.
Love that. Tyler, this is a great place to end this segment. I want the listener to know, hey, we're going to get to spend some more time with Tyler in another show tomorrow. Tyler, where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in chatting pro bono, no catch, I would love to know about you and your business. You can check me out at tylergmount.com or on socials at tylergmount.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.